welcome again to another edition of the Right Has a Left podcast. I am your host, Roy Garden, where we talk all things Trumpism on this show. So we've got a lot of news, as we do every week, so let's go ahead and get right into it. And the news this week, of course, is going to, be the war on Iran that we're doing. And, of course, that is going to be our top story as the Iranian war, as it always does, continues to escalate. And it's sad that it does. But, you know, again, our strikes are continuing on Iranian energy sites in the neighboring Gulf states, including the key facility in Qatar. And that is what is, making Trump considering sending troops into the area. And again, he happens to always come up with these things that where it's like, okay, the war is winding down. No, I'm going to send more troops. The war is escalating. No, the war is winding down. So it brings a lot of confusion, especially to Congress, where he is now asking Congress for billions of more dollars to continue the war effort as we continue to attack Iran. And, of course, if Congress has billions of dollars, why aren't they using that to pay TSA and, move some money from one area to another to help things out here in the United States as we continue to suffer? But I digress. Let's get back into this. So in response to an Israeli attack on the South Pars, the world's biggest gas field, oil and gas prices again soared as the strikes intensified on the global energy crisis. As of yesterday, the price of oil was $108 a barrel. It did spike up at $113 a barrel and dropped a few bucks, so it went down to $108. And this is day 22 of the Iranian war. As folks, if you are not keeping count, I know I sure am. And now, before the war broke out, oil was trading at an average of $60 a barrel. Now, Trump told Israel to stop bombing the South Pars oil fields, which they did because that was just bringing oil prices higher. And, of course, Israel said, well, we'll do that. And, of course, Trump said he didn't know anything about it, that they even were prepared to bomb South Pars. Of course, Israel said he's lying. Of course, they knew about it. They helped plan it. So, Trump always likes to, take the pressure off himself, and he'll say anything and everything to do so. Again, as we deal with gas prices, it's, what are we going to do? So there are some plans to perhaps do some things to get prices down a little bit. But, President Donald Trump said that there would be no further attacks on South Pars unless Iran talks Qatar again, in which the U.S. will massively blow up the entirety of the gas fields. So he knows that that's not a good thing, but he does those kind of threats. And so European leaders, of course, are seeking to stabilize oil prices. They said that they were ready to join appropriate efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And trouble is they want a game plan before they do that. And again, Donald Trump doesn't seem to have a game plan to do something with the Strait of Hormuz, other than, sending the Marines over there, and perhaps they're doing that so they can take care of all the missile outlets as they sit on the shore of Iranian areas there near the Strait of Hormuz. As you're looking at this map, you all along the coastline of Iran there, that's where they have these drones, and this is where they have those missiles that they are using to protect the Strait of Hormuz so nothing can get through. Right now, there are hundreds of ships sitting there that cannot get through. So perhaps maybe Trump does have a game plan, but he just doesn't want to tell anybody about it. Now, moving on about that, what else has just happened, which is breaking news, is Secretary Scott Bessent. Now, the secretary, who's the Commerce Secretary, has come up with a plan that he is going to alleviate the sanctions on Iranian oil. Yes, you heard me correctly. He is going to let Iranian oil for the next 30 days that is already out to sea go through without any sanctions on it. Now, This 30-day easing of sanctions on Iranian oil that is stranded on tankers to shore up supplies and ease tensions will hopefully help consumers and hopefully bring down gas prices a few cents. What is strange about all of this is, as you know, we are at war with Iran. So how is this going to help things? Well, let me try to help explain this to you. What's going to happen? Okay, so you've got this million plus barrels of oil sitting out at sea, which isn't going anywhere, and really we're going to give the Iranian oil 30-day sanctions. Now, we've already lifted sanctions on Russian oil. That, in turn, has given a cash cow to Russia, which they are going to use to build up their military and continue to do stronger offenses against Ukraine. Oh, we sure love that. And this is what's going to happen with Iran. We lifted the sanctions. The oil is going to get through. You can bet a bottom dollar that Iran's going to get some of that money back, and they will continue to somehow fund their own military aggressiveness against the Middle East and on U.S. Military targets. Of course, Trump denies that, and so does Secretary Scott, that that's not going to happen. But trust me, if you're going to do that, somebody's getting the money for it when you lift Iranian U.S. sanctions. So that'll maybe help us out in the short term. But when Trump says the war is going to come to an end soon and you do something like this, people again are going scratching their heads like, WTF, man, what are you doing? You know, so well, it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? So, and again, you know, you're getting mixed messages from the Iranian Ayatollah who we haven't seen, you know, but you continue to see written messages. But one Iranian parliament speaker, one of the regime's most powerful and surviving figures, said the strait will not return to its pre-war status ever. So, you know, we've already done the damage. You know, oil will not come back to that $60 a barrel anytime soon, and probably not the rest of the year, even if this conflict does come to a close soon. But we don't know that. Trump says it is, and then it isn't. Then you see 5,000 Marines being sent out, and I'll never have boots on the ground. But I think, folks, you can plainly see we are going to have boots on the ground. So the mystery continues, doesn't it? So moving on to other news. And that is Joe Kent. Now, he is a former senior intelligence official who resigned in protest over the Iran war, and he's now automatically under investigation because of him resigning, because they say that he has leaked classified information. Now, do we know this to be true? We don't know, all right? But here is a copy of his resignation and why they think he may have leaked classified information. But I'm sure it's just retribution to him, because the guy said that, you know, he doesn't think the Iranian war is justified. And so, of course, Trump gets pissed off, and they automatically put him under investigation. Now, what you've got to understand here is so far more than 2,000 people have been killed across the Middle East in Iran, Israel, and American strikes. That those alone have killed 1,200 people, according to the Iranian Red Crescent Society. Now, you can either believe or not believe that, but at least 850 people have been killed in Lebanon, and 13 have died in Israel. 13 U.S. service members, as you're well aware of, and that is true, have been killed, and 2 more died in non-combatant causes. Now, Secretary Pete Hegseth, and this is another thing that's going on that is going to probably raise your eyebrows. Now, he met privately this past Wednesday with families of 6 service members who died in the Iranian war, and in a press briefing the next morning said the message that he got was consistent and supportive. Now, he says, what I've heard through tears, through hugs, through strength, and through unbreakable resolve was the same from family after family. They all said, finish this and honor their sacrifice. Do not waver, do not stop until the job is done. That's what Pete Hegseth said. However, what is, interesting about all of this, as these service member families met with President Donald Trump and with Pete Hegseth is that that the statement that he made isn't exactly true. All right? One of the service members that was fallen, his father was there. And what you're looking at here is his 28-year-old son, Tech Sergeant Tyler Simmons. And as I mentioned, his father was there to receive the coffin. He was one of the among 6 crew members that was killed when the refueling plane crashed in Iraq last week. Now, Simmons said he recalled this exchange just a little bit differently. All right. He said, I can't speak for the other families, but when he spoke to me, that was not something that we talked about. Now, he said this to NBC News in an interview Thursday. Simmons said he spoke separately to Hegseth and President Donald Trump at Dover, and he said both of those men were cordial to him, and they had a pleasant exchange. However, and he said he was grateful for the warmth and the both men showed him. He and Hegseth spoke mostly about Tyler, his impressive service record, and the speed from which he had advanced in the military, Simmons recalled. He said he told the defense secretary, I understand there's a lot of peril that goes on into making decisions like this war, and I just certainly hope the decisions being made are necessary. Asked if he said anything to Hegseth or Trump about the need to keep fighting the war and to press on, Simmons said, no, I didn't say anything like that along those lines. Now, a 60-year-old music teacher in Columbus also said that he said he questions about the war and he isn't able to draw a definitive conclusions when I don't have all the data. Now, the secretary did speak with each member of the family of the fallen soldiers, and details of each individual conversations, of course, do remain private, and I do respect that. Now, White House spokeswoman Olivia Wales said that the Trump grieved and with the incredible families of 6 service members on Wednesday, and Trump shared his love and expressed the deep gratitude of all of our entire nation. This is the same president that called the military people, as you're well aware of, suckers and losers. But yeah, he said that he did grieve with them. And, of course, a public official was within earshot of Trump's meetings with the family members that day, and he told NBC News they did not hear them tell Trump to finish the job in Iran either. The Dover meetings were part of a ceremony called the Dignified Transfer, which is, of course, very dignified. The families arrived at the air base to retrieve remains that were flown in, and then they are removed in flag draped containers if they choose. The families get a chance to meet face to face with the president, vice president, or any other senior officials that are there. So you've got to understand that this is very dignified. But what is bad here is if Pete Hegseth goes on and on, talking about those things and saying things that aren't true. It leaves you to wonder, like, what else is not true? I know Pete Hegseth is the warmonger, and he's the guy that changed the Department of Defense to Department of War, and he likes to do the rah, 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 macho man thing. But don't put words in the mouth of the family members. That's not good. And that's so you shouldn't do that. Don't lie. Those people, those family members who have lost their loved ones have the right to feel and express anything they want to at any time. And when you put words in their mouth, it's going to come back to bite you in the butt. Now, since nearly 22 days since this war in Iran has begun, President Donald Trump's intelligence chiefs testified before a Senate hearing about the annual threat assessment, which they do annually. Democratic senators avoid asking the intelligence chief, which include National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard and FBI Director Kash Patel, certain questions that, kind of go off the cuff with a little bit more white lies. And Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is there to protect her butt. Her job is in peril, as we all know. And FBI Director Kash Patel, well, he's been hounded many times about taking government jets and his girlfriend around the world to parties and things. So, again, these 3 were asked about the resignation of Joe Kent, whom I just talked to you a little bit about earlier, who didn't like the Iranian war, and he's quitting. Now, a high-ranking Trump appointee, he is, speaking out. So, and of course, they immediately put him under investigation for security leaks because they're pissed off at him for doing so. Now, Gabbard said, here's what she said about the war when asked whether U.S. intelligence determined Iran posed an immediate nuclear threat. Gabbard said it's not her job to determine what an immediate threat is, but the president's is in command and in control. And she's also dodged questions this past week about whether she was asked to brief Trump on the possibility of Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz prior to the U.S. launching military action, which we know they now have done. Gabbard said the U.S. intelligence community assesses that the Iranian regime appears to be intact but largely degraded due to the attacks on its leadership and military capabilities. And again, in this continuing conversation, she is basically, like I said, concerned about saving her own job. And CI Director John Ratcliffe, whose position appears to be more secure than Tulsi's, his administration, he had, again, didn't say a lot when he was questioned by the panel. Again, all of these three are just, yes people to Donald Trump, and they're going to, protect themselves as well as the president. And, of course, going back to Gabbard's testimony, she admitted the part on the intelligence community's assessment that Iran's nuclear program was obliterated by last year's U.S. and Israeli bombing campaign. As we now have found out, they did do a lot of damage, but it wasn't completely obliterated, blown away. And this panel discussion brought out basically a lot of stuff that these three will always continue to be yes people to the president, and they will not say anything that will be negative on behalf of the president's position on the Iranian war or anything else. And this goes back to, again, Tulsi's visiting Atlanta, Georgia, just out of the clear blue sky for a photo op, which basically, again, backfired on her. Now, she was questioned about that as well, and she denied handling ballots during Fulton County's warrant execution. People ask, the panel asked her, why was she there and why was she present? When the FBI seized the 2020 ballots in Atlanta, and she said that the FBI evidence truck that she was photographed standing in was empty at the time. She did not touch any of those ballots. Senator John Ossoff also asked Gabbard a number of pointed questions about her involvement in that particular search. He said that the committee is probing her involvement in that election-related activities while revealing that Gabbard's general counsel and deputy general counsel had provided testimony for the inquiry. The committee's chair, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, said the Georgia Democrat off in the midst of his questioning, because his time had run out. Now, Gabbard said that President Donald Trump made the request and that she observed the seizure on the day of the search, but she declined to say how that request was communicated. They asked her, did he call you? And did he write you? Did he text you? What? And she says that information is privileged. And, of course, to bring this all back to home base, the intelligence officials repeatedly either contradicted or failed to back up Trump's claims about the Iranian war. There wasn't much support for Trump's claim Iran was an imminent threat, and the Democrats avoid focusing on Kent, who I just talked to you about earlier on this podcast, specifically. Now, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard failed to clear up much of anything about the controversial January search of a Fulton County, Georgia elections office. So this whole thing with this battle basically turned out to be a wash. Was anything accomplished from it? Absolutely not, because everybody just kind of went around and, talked around the war wagon, I guess, if that's the term you want to use. They couldn't say anything because they were told not to say anything, and they were there basically to kind of, keep their own butts intact. So this is basically how things go. All right. Now, the other thing that, of course, went on this particular past week was this gentleman right here, and that is Markway Mullins, the senator from Oklahoma, who is going to be confirmed as the new director of Homeland Security. No question about it, he is. And how did he get there? It was a one-person vote that got him over the hump to be nominated. And, of course, that was the Democrat Fetterman. And his vote basically got this guy through, because even the Republicans do not like Mark Wayne Mullen, any way, shape, or form. And so he's going to be the new director of Homeland Security. Chairman Rand Paul, who was a no vote on the nomination, and he is the chairman of this committee, of course, he's had a huge fight with this guy going way back. And why did Fetterman decide to be the tie-breaking vote on this is because, he did say, I came in with an open mind, and I'm going to maintain that was always my way of doing things, he said. He says, I haven't been rocked by some kinds of mic-dropping kinds of moments, for sure. He said he also suggested that he wasn't moved by Paul's comments on Mullen's attacks against him. He said, what happened to my colleague from Kentucky is terrible. He said, I'm not going to deny that. Political violence is awful, and he was in the hospital with pain. No one wants that kind of thing. Fetterman did wind up casting the one vote that got this guy nominated. In other news, Donald Trump has said that he believes people with learning disabilities should not be president, as he renewed his taunts at California Governor Gavin Newsom over his dyslexia. President Trump said Newsom, who is a potential Democratic White House contender, he called him dumb. Watch this.
Gavin Newsom has admitted that he has learning disabilities. Honestly, I'm all for people with learning disabilities, but not for my president. I think a president should not have learning disabilities, okay? And I know it's highly controversial to say such a horrible thing. The President of the United States, Gavin Newsom, admitted that he has learning disabilities, dyslexia, everything about him is dumb.
Now, he also made fun last week of the California governor's difficulty with reading and spelling. In an oppressor that he had, and of course the governor has been very open that he has problems doing that, But when the president of the United States calls another human being a brain dead moron, there's something wrong there. That's very sad. Now, the National Center for Learning Disabilities told the media that it was disturbed and strongly condemns the president's remarks, as I do too. This is Donald Trump. He thinks he can say anything he wants to, and it's his right to do so. And that this is how he bullies. This is one of Donald Trump's mental capacities that he has. I think he gets insecure if nothing's talked about him positively, so he goes back and bullies people. That's what a weak person does. And to call somebody with dyslexia, whether it be, the governor from California or any human being dumb and brain dead is just absolutely sad. Dyslexia affects 1 out of 5 Americans, and Trump, of course, has his own faults as well. Another thing that's been going on in the news that from Donald Trump is, of course, a fundraiser that he has been doing. That's also in the news. Now, a fundraising email from President Donald Trump's Political Action Committee has a provocative pitch using an image from the Saturday's dignified transfer honoring 6 fallen U.S. soldiers. It promises access to the president's private national security briefings. If you pay the thousands of dollars to Donald Trump, he will invite you automatically to a private national security briefing. You don't have to have any background checks. If you give enough money, by God, just come on in and sit down with me and we'll talk about all the secrets in the world today. Wouldn't you love to be able to do that, folks? Huh? Now, the email sent by Never Surrender Incorporated promotes what it calls a national security briefing membership and urges recipients to claim your spot now, with multiple links to donate in what it describes as an exclusive group receiving updates about national security threats. It promises that members will receive my private national security briefing, so says Donald Trump, unfiltered updates on the threats facing America. The straight truth on border invasions, foreign adversaries, deep state sabotage, and every danger the fake news hides. The message includes an official White House photograph showing Donald Trump saluting a dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base, a solemn military tradition that is supposed to be extremely private, honoring fallen U.S. service members. Now, Trump attended alongside members of his administration. A flag-draped transfer case, which is used to transport soldiers' remains, is visible in the photo. And I could go on and on about this, but ladies and gentlemen, this is just freaking sad, and it's a disgrace that you would use a photograph like this showing that you're a big, strong American to raise thousands of dollars for your political action committee. This is what the Republicans have stooped down to, and it is totally unethical, and I would sure Congress would say illegal to offer classified information to just anybody and everybody that would donate thousands of dollars to you and let them come on over and let you sit in and get classified information. See, this goes back to all of those files that Trump kept at Mar-a-Lago that he was convicted for. Classified information to him is nothing. You know, if I want to share it with somebody, my friend or whoever, they give me the money, I don't give a crap. That's cool with me. I'm the president. I can do whatever the hell I want, when I want, to whomever I want, and nobody can do a damn thing about it. That's his attitude. And I cannot believe that somebody would say to the president, who has supposed to have all of these wonderful advisors circling around him, like, dude, you can't do that. And he says, I'm the president. I'll do whatever the hell I want, and you can't do a thing about it. So again, and both Republicans and Democrats have come out on this fundraising email and said, Jesus, what the hell are you doing? It's just, I don't know, He put in there, I am the president, Donald J. Trump. You are the only reason we saved America, the page reads. Now I'm asking you to consider making a small, sustaining contribution so we can complete the MAGA agenda. Can I count on your support? It's when you've had 13 service members killed in defending our country and doing the Patriotic Act, and then you put out a publicity photo like this, I don't know. It's sad, and so many people have come out and said, this is disgusting. Both Republicans and Democrats, and they don't understand how the heck he would do that. Moving on to other bizarre news that the Trump did impressors this past week. I've got a lot of them, folks, but that one, and I've got one more to show you that was just strange as hell. President Donald Trump on Thursday invoked Japan's December 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor when speaking about recent U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran during a bilateral meeting at the White House with Japanese Prime Minister Sani Takahashi. He was asked by a reporter why the U.S. didn't tell Japan or other allies about his decision to strike Iran before it did so, which obviously, as you're well aware of, he didn't. The president said, we went in very hard and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted a surprise. Who knows better about surprises than Japan, okay? Why didn't you tell me about the attack on Pearl Harbor, he said to her. Roll the tape here. Look at this.
Of course, now Japan and US are very good friends. But one question: why didn't you tell US allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? He's asking me, no, you believe in surprise, I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out, the first 2 days, we probably knocked out 50% of what and much more than we anticipated doing. So if I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise.
You believe in surprises, I think, much more than us, Trump added, referencing the 1941 attack on the American fleet at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii that precipitated the United States' entry into World War II. Yeah. Did you see the expression on that lady's face? She wasn't, of course, even alive during the attack on Pearl Harbor. And, of course, Japan, after, we dropped the 2 atom bombs, surrendered. And, of course, they have since then, and we helped them rebuild, they have since then become a strong ally to the United States of America. What a dumb, stupid thing to say to the Japanese Prime Minister. And you can tell by the look on her face, she was just like, and you heard even in the background people going, what? You said that? I mean, and of course, you could hear a pin drop after he said that. He thought that was so funny and everything. And then, of course, he just went on and moved on. Like, you don't like my jokes? Okay, screw you. I don't care. And then he continued also to say in this presser how great the economy is, even though inflation's starting to creep up. We have lost jobs and gas prices, he said, were down in some places. And of course, that's not true. And the economic data has also showed sluggish growth. And that's why, of course, that the prime minister's rate is holding and it wasn't lowered, which pissed off Trump. And of course, he's as mad as a hornet. And now he's investigating our wonderful gentleman that controls the interest rates because he said now he's spending too much money on his remodeling of the Treasury Department. And he's investigating that. And, of course, Trump compared that to his ballroom that he says was exactly doing well and not costing a lot of money, which, again, is a lie. They are behind on that as well. But, that's Donald Trump. Everything's a lie. I will build the world in my little orbit the way I want, and you will have to accept it whatever I say it is. Whatever I say it is, that's what the God's honest truth it is. That's how he handles things. But again, this deal that he did with the Japanese prime minister is it's crazy, isn't it? All right, my last news item for this edition of The Right has left. Top Republicans and Democrats again are trying to end the month-long Department of Homeland Security shutdown, huddled with White House border czar Tom Homan in the Capitol on this past Thursday. The in-person talks comes as Senate Majority Leader John Thune threatened to nix the upcoming 2-week Easter recess unless negotiations can strike a deal. And as you're well aware of, no deal was struck. They still did not come. They still had an impasse on doing any funding to the Department of Homeland Security. And since DHS funding lapsed on February 14th, lawmakers have shown little interest in ending the partisan standoff. But with recent suspected terrorist attacks across the country, thousands of federal employees working without pay, and major disruptions at some airports as Transportation Secretary Administration agents continue to miss paychecks. Urgency now appears to be growing on Capitol Hill to come to some kind of a bipartisan deal to end the stalemate, although they were not able to do so. The officials have said, I can't see us taking a break if the government is still shut down, threatening to cancel lawmakers' cherished recess, during which time they often plan family vacations, campaigning and primaries for this year's midterm elections, or official trips abroad. Yeah, I love that. Official trips abroad. Yeah. Is a favorite move of most congressional leaders frustrated by legislative gridlock. Lawmakers in both the House and the Senate are slated to depart for a 2-week recess for the Easter holiday and spring break beginning on March 27th. Whether that'll happen or not, we will have to wait and see. So, as you're well aware of, they did try to bring the vote up, and again, it was defeated. And for those of you who do not understand why the stalemate, and of course they're trying to blame the Republicans, blame the Democrats, and Democrats blame the Republicans. Here's the bottom deal. Why are the Democrats holding out? They're asking for just one small thing from the Department of Homeland Security and from the Republicans. They feel that the ICE agents should not wear the mask, they should have body cameras, and they should have identification in their official duties. They presently do not do that. That's all they're asking for on this. And they've also said that you can pull the billions of dollars that you sucked from Medicare and Medicaid and from other departments to fund ICE with billions and billions of dollars, why don't you use some of that money that you've got in there for your operations on ICE to pay these people with the TSA? And the Republicans are saying, screw you, we're not going to do that. We need to have all of our Gestapo agents out there continuing to round up everybody and everything. You know, we need to continue to round up 3,000 illegal immigrants a day, whether or not they committed a crime or not. And so this is what the Democrats are holding out on. They're asking for these people to have more visible identification on them, and they'll go ahead and, you know, be happy to pass this thing. The Republicans are saying no, and they will not also transfer money from the funding of the ICE agents to pay the Department of Homeland Security people, the TSA agents. The money is there. They just don't want to transfer it over to pay their bill. They want to use this as a political ploy to make the Democrats look bad. So that's basically why we have a stalemate. And same with the SAVE Act, you know, that's not going to pass either. The Senate is not, they need 60 votes. They're not going to be able to support that either, even though Florida has come up with their plans. So anyway, that's my edition of the Right Has Left podcast. I am your host, Roy Garton. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I do look forward to your comments. It's been a busy week, and we'll see what happens next week with our conflict in Iran, and whether by next week, we will have boots on the ground. I'm kind of thinking we will. Until then, you try to have a good week. Take care.